Next question from Austin, next installment. What makes someone an above average poker player? Well, the answer is how much you win. There it is, the Death Star. Almost done. Not totally done yet. There's still the cranes, you see them, but almost done. So I don't think this is exactly what Austin meant, but I'm going to talk about this aspect, this perspective for a second. Whether you think of poker as a zero-sum game or a less than zero-sum game depends on how you define the players. So if you're only thinking of the people actually playing the hands, it's a less than zero-sum game because money gets taken off the table for rake and for other reasons. If you want to think about poker as an exactly zero-sum game, which is how I usually do, you have to think about everyone who is making money from all those chips on the table. So the house is winning via the rake. The house can't possibly be a losing player. The house is winning. The dealers are winning. The dealers are getting tips from those chips on the table. The dealers are winning. The waitresses are winning. They're getting tips from those chips on the table. The massage personnel are winning because they're getting chips off the table. Sometimes there are chip runners and floor who are tipped. They're also winning from the chips on the table. Food runners are winning. They're getting tips from those chips on the table. So all those players are getting some of the chips on the table. What's left for the players to actually win? So there are more chips on the table. I mean, players can win, but someone needs to be funding all of this winning. All the people I already named, I haven't even gotten to the players actually playing the poker hands. Everyone else I just named is always going to be a winner. There's never going to be a food runner who is putting chips on the table. They're only taking chips off the table. So someone needs to be funding all of that, and someone needs to be funding the winning players at the table. This is the losing players at the table. So losing players lose a massive amount of money. So my point is, if you did the math, and I did this once years ago, you know, I think the house is making this much in rake every hour. I think the dealers are getting tipped this much. I think the food runner, chip runner, waitress, massage woman, everyone else getting chips off the table are making this much. And let's say there's only one winning player out of 9 at the table, and he's winning this much. If you add up all that, you could divide that number by 8, the other 8 players at the table, and you could figure out what is the average that these other 8 players need to be losing per hour to fund all of this winning. And it's a pretty shocking number, actually. So my bigger point is there's not many winning players in poker. If you're a winning player, you are way above average. The average poker player is negative some number per hour, negative some amount of dollars per hour. The average player is a losing player. But I think Austin was more asking what skills does an above average player have, and a lot of it comes down to hand reading because everything is relative. So I see some people, they play ace king the exact same way every time it gets dealt to them. Like, the amount of players doesn't matter, what position they're in doesn't matter, the action before it's their turn doesn't matter, how big the pot is doesn't matter, the board texture doesn't matter. All these things matter a ton. And if you're playing it the exact same way every time, I mean, you could come out a winner. It could be an okay way you're playing it, but it's a lot less than optimal to just be doing the same thing with the same hand every single time. A ton is relative. Absolute hand strength doesn't mean that much. Relative hand strength means a lot. There are times I've felt I was ahead pair versus pair, and I've tried to get all in very deep. There are times I've had a flush, and it just didn't make all that much sense for my opponent to be willing to call a huge bet with the worst hand on the board that we had, and can't play it as big as you would like to, even though it's cool, you have a flush, you would like to win it all in, you like to win it all in all the time. But everything is relative. There are times I've put my opponent on a pair but didn't think he was willing to fold, so it's not a good decision to try to bluff him off. There was a hand in a Bellagio I remember many years ago. I thought this guy was very, very terrified that the flush hit. He was, and it only took a $30 bet to get him to fold a set of 8s when the only thing he lost to was a diamond flush. He folded a set of 8s face up for like 30 bucks on the river. So even with bluffs, everything is relative. And when I say hand reading, there's really 2 parts to it. It's knowing what your opponent has and knowing how he's going to react to your action. So it's not all that important if you could put your opponent on exactly pocket queens if he's unwilling to fold on a board that has an ace and a king on it. If he's not going to fold, it's not a good spot to bluff, even though you were very good at reading his hand. So if you're a winning player, you're definitely above average, and I would say hand reading and you know, knowing how your opponents are going to react after you read their hands pretty well, that is a huge step in the right direction, because so much is relative, and there are big pots you're going to win with one pair, and there are pots you're going to lose with a flush. It's not just that, you know, the bigger hand I have, the more money I should try to get in. That's a incorrect way to think about it.
Yeah, I got it at the stadium in May.